It's quite common to find an argument taking place on Twitter or any other hell site between two or more people about the existence of a sapphic character. One side will claim that the character in question has never acted gay at all, and if you watch the TV show or the film with no inquiring eyes, they appear straight. Yet this isn't always the case. Since the beginning of film, queer characters have been portrayed and often hidden behind a code to make the characters more palatable for a mainstream straight audience. That straight character who is dating your fave man dude seems to be looking a little longingly at the other female lead, doesn't she? Or she's doing romantic gestures hidden behind the veil of friendship, when that character had never really done anything like that to anyone she was in a relationship with. It's not just that, it's little things shown that we don't get told. Actions and certain phrases that convey to the audience a message. Not everyone is going to get that message. Often the context of the character's sexuality is hidden in what they say and how they say. They may never be overtly shown, but they tell you in other ways. One such example of coded queer characters comes from a rather unlikely place. Or maybe not when you consider horror has always been a place where queer characters were used or portrayed. There are a number of examples of this, but today I want to look at the 1963 adaptation of Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House. The film was entitled rather simple and rather unimaginatively The Haunted, and was directed by Robert Wise. As a teen, every Saturday night they'd put on these old horror flicks. You know, those old, really awful graphics. The monsters looked more comical than scary. And busty blonde vampires targeted pretty virgins to stay young forever for her dully handsome lover, who was just about to jilt her for an actually even bustier brunette. I watched those films. The Haunting was one of those films, but as opposed to the others, this was actually brilliant, and it has stuck with me ever since. So let's get into this. The film basically starts with Dr. John Markway, and he narrates the history of the 90-year-old Hill House, which was constructed in Massachusetts by Hugh Crane as a home for his wife, and she died when her carriage crashed against a tree as she approached the house for the very first time. Crane remarried, but his second wife died in the house from a fall down the stairs. And Crane's daughter Abigail lived in the house for the rest of her life, never moving out of the nursery. She died calling for her nurse companion. The companion then inherited the house, but later hanged herself from a spiral staircase in the library. Hill House was eventually inherited by a Mrs. Sanderson, who owns the house, although it has stood empty for some time. She seems rather reluctant to move in. I can't quite understand why she would be. Markway wishes to study the reported paranormal activity at Hill House. He is allowed to begin his investigation on condition that he has Mrs. Sanderson's heir, Luke Sanderson, come with him, along with several prospective choices. Only two individuals accept Markway's invitation to join the investigation: a psychic, Theodora, and Eleanor Lance, who experienced poltergeist activity as a child.
You're frightened, Nell?
Oh, no more. Just when I thought I was all alone. But how did you know my nickname is Nell?
Well, that is the affectionate term for Eleanor, isn't it?
Yes. Yes, I suppose it is. What a nice way of putting it.
The affectionate term for Theodora is Theo.
Theo. We're going to be great friends, Theo.
Like sisters?
Eleanor spent her adult life caring for her invalid mother, whose recent death has left Eleanor with severe guilt. The group find the mansion's walls were constructed with angles askew, resulting in off-center perspectives and doors that open and close by themselves. The library contains the ramshackle spiral staircase from which the previous owner hung herself. During their first night in the house, Eleanor and Theo are terrified by supernatural occurrences outside Theo's bedroom door. Banging is heard against the door, and the voice of a young girl is heard echoing with laughter. Despite this, Eleanor feels a tentative affinity to Hill House. The team explores the house the next day, discovering a cold spot outside the nursery. Following another night of loud disturbances, the team discovers the words, "Help Eleanor come home," scrawled on a wall, which causes Eleanor some distress. Understandably. The protagonist, Eleanor, during one of the many nights she has been willingly at Hill House, grabs the hand of her roommate, Theodora, as she lies in her bed in the dark. She has been terrified by the whisperings and taunting, gurgling laughter emanating from the house's very walls. As Eleanor prays for the moment to pass, she presses on the other's hand, holding so tight she could feel the fine bones of Theodora's fingers, wrote Jackson. Robert Wise visually accompanies the distant, disturbing sounds by fixing the camera on a piece of the wall, half illuminated by the moonlight, a leafy pattern of molding that seems to abstractly form a gaping face. Suddenly, as Eleanor reaches a fever pitch of anxiety, the lights come on, the monstrous sounds stop, and Eleanor realizes that Theodora has been across the room in her own bed the whole time. In both film and book, Eleanor cries, "God, God, whose hand was I holding?" More than just a creepy illustration of the possibly unfriendly supernatural forces at work at Hill House, this moment speaks indirectly to one of the story's central oddities. As puzzled over today as the supernatural ambiguity of Jackson's horror tale, the nature of the relationship between Eleanor and Theodora, played on screen by Julie Harris and Claire Bloom. Though they arrive at Hill House as perfect strangers, Eleanor and Theodora, the only women who have been summoned to stay at this terrible place, enact a delicate dance around one another.
Have you known Dr. Markway long?
I have breakfast ready at 9.
No, I've never met him.
I don't stay after 6, not after it begins to get dark.
My only contact with him has been our correspondence about the, quote, experiment, unquote.
I leave before the dark comes, so there won't be anyone around if you need help.
You really expect me to believe you're sane and the rest of the world is mad?
Well, why not? The world is full of inconsistencies, unnatural things. Nature's mistakes, they're called. You, for instance.
All of their interactions are defined by this kind of push and pull, love, hate, fear, comfort, and the simultaneous desire and repugnance of that hand-holding perfectly stands in for their larger attraction and repulsion. Eleanor, meek and single, and possibly virginal, has spent most of her adult life taking care of her mother. Theodora, bohemian and outspoken, functions as a kind of mirror opposite to Eleanor, instantly dazzling and confident. The women will bond and argue and finally reveal mutual loathing over the course of their week-long visit to Hill House. Complicating matters considerably is the matter of Theodora's sexuality. In Jackson's book, there are many small gestures towards the brasher woman's lesbianism. The movie teases those out even further, though. In this immediately post-Children's Hour era, it stops significantly short of clarifying this for its viewers. Theodora's probable homosexuality exists largely as it relates to Eleanor and her demons. Robert Wise's production is a traditionally gothic bit of horror that somehow remains faithful to Shirley Jackson's book while also managing to flatten its surreal ambivalence and literalize much of its integrity. Thanks to an over-reliance on voiceover and melodramatic performance style, Jackson's writing is so evocative and inextricably tied to what makes this story work that both the makers of this film and Mike Flanagan in his Netflix series that's very liberally inspired by it chose to begin with a narration of passages taken from Jackson's spectacular first paragraph. Whatever walked there, walked alone. Jackson's style and persona permeate all. Arguably, she was more successful as a sculptor of short stories, which more willingly and readily house the ambiguities that fuel her work, cutting things off just when it seems like an explanation or a solution could present itself. Her masterful, chilling, dark tales, The Summer People and Paranoia, especially attest to this, both of which conclude just as something evil is bestirred. As a novel, The Haunting of Hill House extends and accentuates her penchant for emotional obscurity to a fascinating and maddening degree, localizing it in the common debate about whether what we're seeing and what the characters are experiencing is truly psychological or paranormal phenomena. And at a time when same-sex desire was still officially diagnosed as a mental disorder, the appearance of a gay character in a film so preoccupied with emotional disturbance can't help but raise eyebrows as to intentionality. In the first DSM manual published in 1952, homosexuality is called a sociopathic personality disturbance. 5 years later, after The Haunting, it was only slightly improved when DSM-2 took it out of the realm of sociopathy, but still defined it as a sexual deviance. Wise is less cagey about Theodora's sexuality than Jackson, yet the slight opening up ironically makes the characterization seem more reductive. For Jackson, who, according to biographers, on more than one occasion spoke or wrote of her discomfort with critics and scholars, identifying latent lesbian themes in her various works, Theodora, or Theo, is not exactly a sexual predator, but an agent of disruption nonetheless. Late in the book, when the four main characters, which we've said also include Luke, the wisecracking heir who will inherit Hill House, what a lucky man, and the doctor, the supernatural investigator who has invited them all, they are discussing what scares them most. Theo's response is that she's scared of knowing what we really want. Immediately after this happens, she pressed her cheek against Eleanor's hand, and Eleanor, hating the touch of her, took her hand away quickly. In Wise's film, Theo's line is subtly yet significantly altered. When asked what she's afraid of, she responds, "Of knowing what I really want," which is followed by her sly, borderline seductive glance at Eleanor. This also calls back to an early moment when, soon after first meeting, Theodora calls Eleanor my new companion, while knowingly raising a martini to her lips. The Haunting also addresses homosexuality as it had so long traditionally been in terms of glances and codes. When placed in a horror movie, such suggestions serve to make it seem sinister. Whether Theodora is actually attracted to Eleanor and making a play for her, or whether she's just trying to connect, is unclear in both the book and film, and also speaks to the sketchiness of her character. Theo seems a model of self-possession and confidence, wearing stylish mannish blouses and her hair parted and plastered. Yet when her sexuality becomes a topic of suspicion, she shows her vulnerable side. Eleanor, increasingly hysterical, is the opposite. A mild maiden with talents, crueler in the film even than the book. She lashes out when cornered. At one point, Theodora calls her stupid and innocent, to which she responds, "I'd rather be innocent than like you." When Theodora asks what she means, she responds with not so subtle homophobic invective. Now who's being stupid and innocent? You know perfectly well what I mean. The world is full of inconsistencies, unnatural things. In a cutback to a reaction shot, an offended Theodora begins to retreat, which doesn't stop Eleanor from landing the final blow. Nature's mistakes, they're called. You, for instance. The shocking nastiness of the comment forces Theodora to snap back around. A defiant woman, devastated, arms wrapped around herself. The scene abruptly ends before Theodora is able to say anything, leaving the insult hanging in the air, and all but stanching the teasing, erotic flow that had seemed to pass between the two women in earlier scenes. Eleanor's rejection of Theodora is complete. For some viewers, this passage might not seem fully legible because of the film's inability or unwillingness to fully out Theodora. Why is revealed in the Warner Brothers DVD audio commentary track that the original script by Nelson Gidding featured an early break-up scene that established Theodora's sexuality more explicitly. Before first setting out for Hill House, she would have been seen writing, "I hate you," in lipstick on her bedroom mirror before yelling out of her window at a departing woman. Aside from more directly addressing her same-sex attraction, the scene might have also set her up as tempestuous and unlucky in love, yet due to its explicitness of theme, Weiss said he cut that lesbian scene. And this really is a good film. I kind of tend to stay away from horror movies these days. I feel like life is kind of like too horrific, but I guess, I mean, I think that's like the whole point of horror and crime, when you put it, in a sanitized place where it can't hurt you and it's safe and you can watch people scream and run and be afraid and it's okay for you because... But I kind of stay away from that. I try to watch it in in rationing, so especially these days because just life is so crazy. But it's actually a really good film to watch. Avoid the 1999 remake because it's just the worst. It's terrible. How do you take a movie classic and then just remake it really badly? Well, they did. And Theo is just really this iconic character of film for me. She really is. So that is the end of the video, and hopefully you got an idea about queer coded characters. Often this is what I see, people not really understanding what queer coded is, and then going, but you need to say it. Well, no. A straight character doesn't say, "I'm straight." Well, I guess they can, but they usually don't. It's not really something that needs to be said, that, a character's sexuality, and often that's how queer baiting happens. You get those coded instances, and then the writers and the creators can kind of like plead ignorance, like, we don't know what we're doing, we don't know what we... Yeah, no, you do. You work in the movie business. You know. Anyway, so this is the end of the video, and until next time, stay safe, take care. I'll see you in the next one.